So, moving along to our last and many say one of our most beneficial panel presentations. The benefit providers is a long-standing panel discussion within the National HBPA. Again, I mentioned Richard Rydell earlier, co-chair with Marianne O'Connell from Washington HBPA, both of which could not be here this year. So as I told Lauren early on, it's the first time since I've been here since 2015 that I've had to try to help organize the benefit providers. So thank you to Lauren and Tammy for helping organize everything for this panel as well as the breakout. Peter was instrumental in trying to get everything for the breakout, and Tammy and Lauren helping get the panel put together here. So let me again thank our sponsors for the lunch in this panel: Illinois HBPA again, Arizona HBPA, and Racing Gaming Services. So I'm going to bring up the panel now. Tammy Wright, Thoroughbred Racing Association of Oklahoma. She's been a part of the benefit providers panel for a number of years, and she's going to help moderate an excellent panel with hopefully beneficial topics for everyone. Claudia Goebel, here with the Minnesota HBPA Vice President. She's going to talk about very important HR, human resources information that we believe affiliates need to be made aware of. And then also, we're very happy to have Rishi Sharma here. Rishi is the co-owner and CEO of Assembly Point Financial. Meeting him initially, we were able to talk about possibilities for insurance within affiliates and trying to use some of the changing policies that we've seen in the United States, but ultimately looking at what his services can provide. And then also the great purple doctor, Dr. Reed McClellan, is going to give us his State of the Union address, and then also, as always, talk about the very beneficial Groom Elite program.
I want to hold it. Thanks, Eric. Hi, everyone. Glad you all stayed around. I'm pretty thankful to be the moderator of this. I feel very passionate about our benevolent programs and about each affiliate. I love the benefit providers meeting in the morning when we all get together and we get to have a round table and discuss everything that each affiliate does that is different from everybody else. And it brings back feedback that you can take to your own state and incorporate it into your state. So with that being said, we're going to start off with Rishi and let you go for it.
Very good. Thank you. Before I take everyone down the rabbit hole that is my mind, I thought I'd take a moment to express our gratitude for Eric, Lauren, and Andrea for having us and coordinating this and inviting us to share some of our information and our experience with you. Additionally, I did make a promise to my wife that I wouldn't use any curse words up here. And in reflecting on my materials, I don't think there's anything that should elicit that much passion that I would need to emphasize using foul language, but you never know. Let's see how this goes, right? But I am committed wholly to making this as engaging and entertaining as possible. So we've been in practice for nearly 30 years. I'm a certified financial professional by credentialing. And over those years, as we get introduced to business owners, some of the questions that come up are more specifically, I would say, hey, is there a specific industry that you focus on or you specialize in? And in reflecting on that, I would say that the simple answer to that is no. And early on in my career, the conversation with myself was, well, maybe I should be specializing in something. Maybe I should just pick an industry and drill down on it. But as I've matured over 3 decades, in a lot of ways, I reflect back and I realize that even though it's not a specific industry that we're focusing on, there are a lot of commonalities among small business owners on every industry. And some of those are just the simple challenges of running payroll, trying to figure out how to run your QuickBooks, hiring employees, keeping employees, your top and your bottom lines, trying to figure out, do we continue to grow or stay the same or sell our practice? How do I raise my family? All of these threads that run through every industry, every business has given us a very broad perspective on the commonalities that business owners are faced with. And so what I want to spend some time doing today is sharing some of our experiences, our anecdotes about client engagements and helping you understand what small business owners go through and what likewise employees go through as well. Often when we're brought into a situation, almost exclusively by referral, the conversation starts out, hey, you know what? I need to offer benefits to my employees. Usually starts out with something like, my employees are complaining, they want benefits, their friends have benefits, and I don't know what that means. I don't know what it's going to cost, but can you help me figure this out? So from an employer perspective, we come in consultatively. If there's nothing in place, try to figure out what the budget accommodates, what the needs are, and where we're going to focus our financial and time resources on. From the employee perspective, as a CFP advisor, it's helping employees understand what the benefits are and how to best utilize those offerings from your employer. Over time, I'd say the biggest challenge with employees is the fact that, quite frankly, they deal with a lot of financial stress. They're trying to work, they're raising a family, they're trying to do the best that they can, but how does that financial stress play out in the workforce? Leads to, amongst many things, absenteeism, reduced concentration, mistakes and accidents, and from a farming perspective, not something you want to be dealing with, but overall job dissatisfaction. And that it has a really negative way when one employee is disgruntled of kind of flowing through the rest of your workforce. So it's incumbent upon employers to understand that and understand how these benefits become more value than just doing something to appease your employees. If the emotional side of the conversation isn't appealing enough, then let's take a little bit deeper dive into the analysis of this. Statistically speaking, and I'll use Gallup estimates, but you're free to go online and do your own research. If you lose a good employee, it's going to cost you about 150% of what that employee's annual salary was to replace that employee. And when I say 150%, I'm speaking more specifically, not in dollar terms, but your cost in recruiting, onboarding, and training. And typically, you're not really going to find out whether or not this is a good fit for your team until you get past that honeymoon phase of 3 to 6 months. So if you're paying somebody $30,000 and it costs you $15,000 to bring somebody on board, and at the 7-month mark, you really figure out who you hired and you got to go through the whole process again, another $15,000. And the incidental costs that go along with that, decreased productivity, knowledge loss. I'll just share with you one of the most valuable attributes of our team is that they've been with us for so long and they know all of our clients. They know the service expectations, they know our systems, they know my expectation on timeliness and responsiveness and ethics, and we all know each other's families. So there's a very hidden but meaningful cost there, as well as reduced morale. And as I mentioned before, it's a very toxic environment when you have one employee looking around for work and that kind of bleeds to the next employee, and before you know it, half your workforce is gone or upset. So when we're talking about retention and attraction for that matter, I would submit to you that if you haven't attracted the right employees, retention is not really a concern for you. But attracting employees usually starts with, okay, I got a base level competitive salary, employees still struggling financially. Option number one, let's talk about reviewing their overall compensation. That's a 1-lane road with 2 big cars on it. You have a need, they have a need, so where do you meet in the middle? Alternatively, you could be discussing the worker's career growth and goals. We have a client, great guy, known him for almost 20 years, become a friend. And he owns a mechanic shop with about 8, 9 lifts in there. And he says to me one day, Rishi, you know, everybody that I hire, I put them through 2-week training course. And I looked at him and I said, well, that's pretty expensive. Aren't you worried that they're going to leave you? And he said, yes, I am worried, but I got a greater fear than that I don't send them to training and they stay. So investing in people's career opportunities really only serves the bottom line for you as well. Additionally, offer more flexibility to their work schedule. You know, this virtual work environment has really come to fruition, but I've noticed that with our team, almost exclusively virtual now, they're more tuned into the work environment, more able to focus on the workload that they're doing. And quite frankly, they're not stressed to get to school to pick up their kids, run their laundry, do all their grocery shopping on Friday night, Saturday morning, and before they know it, they're getting ready for Monday morning again. So finding that balance of flexibility within their work schedule. And then finally, providing meaningful benefits. Meaningful benefits, let's kind of take a step back and just talk about what kind of benefits there are available. You know, there's 401k, which is very commonly known as retirement plans. There's also 403bs, 457 plans, group health insurance. You can assist with individual health insurance costs, life insurance, dental vision insurance, HSA and FSA plans, health savings accounts, flexible spending accounts. If you have staff with kids and they're having to pay for daycare costs at a click of $1,000 a month, they've got to earn that money, pay their taxes, and then pay the $1,000 towards daycare. If you put in an inexpensive FSA plan that's completely voluntary, they can choose whether to participate in it or not. That employee can funnel on a pre-tax basis their monies through the account and then pay for daycare costs on a pre-tax basis. That's a 30% savings or more for each employee. That's a significant turnaround for them. And when I say dependent daycare, I'm not suggesting it's, you know, my Nana takes care of my kids. It's got to be a legitimate expense. But again, putting something like this in place is very simple, very inexpensive, and very cost-effective for employees' financial stress and overall wellness. Additionally, you could do something like pet insurance. I mean, if you've ever had your dog bitten by a rattlesnake and had an emergency expense, you know how expensive that can be. Identity theft coverage. Again, another very important, inexpensive way to access benefits and financial planning. Now, while summarily those are all the benefits that you can provide, often the conversation with employers, again, kind of going back to the financial feasibility is these are expensive. What can I do to start with? We don't really have anything in place right now. So let's kind of revamp this conversation and focus on voluntary benefits. And these are offerings that you do as an employer that you put in place that the employee chooses whether to participate or not. The employer chooses whether to fund it or not. But at the end of the day, there's either discounted services available for the employees and tax benefits in some cases. So examples, in California, they passed a law several years ago that requires all employer groups of 2 or greater to implement a retirement plan for their employees. We started getting a lot of referrals from HR firms and accountancy firms because they didn't do the retirement plans, but they understood the law. The referrals would come in and say, I was told I have to put a 401k plan in place. Okay, not very reasonable for a small business at a cost of, you know, $3,000 to $5,000 a year. So what could you do in the alternative that would help qualify for this rule of implementation? And in some cases, we put in employer-sponsored IRAs where the employer did nothing more than put in a boilerplate document that allows employees to withhold money on a pre-tax basis through their payroll and submit it to their IRA. No responsibilities beyond that and really no cost for the employer. You could do discounted dental, vision, or life plans. Employers could come in some situations and pay the premium for $50,000 of life insurance, have that tax deduction for the business. Maybe it costs you $8 a month per employee, maybe 20, but at the end of the day, it's a tax deductible expense and you've provided your employee's family with $50,000 worth of tax-free death benefit if something happened to them. Pet insurance, talked about that a little bit. Identity theft protection. Didn't think it was a big deal for myself. We put it in our firm several years ago until one day on a Saturday morning, I'm sitting having coffee and I get an email and a text from the ID service saying, your 5-year-old daughter is at Home Depot opening a credit card. I was a little disappointed because I didn't even know she was working, let alone in construction. So I called in and said, no, that wasn't us. And they said, don't worry about it. We'll take care of it. Called and followed up on Monday. But then following that same Sunday, I found out she was in partnership with my 3-year-old daughter at Home Depot. So both of them were working together. But again, when I went back to work Monday, they froze my accounts for 30 days, meaning nobody could open up any new credit lines. And I didn't have to worry about that. I just went back to work. So if we're talking about dealing with absenteeism or distractions at work, all the financial challenges that employees go through with their families on a personal level, these are little things that we can be doing as employers to help them out. And wellness benefits, such as financial planning. One of my favorite things to do is with numbers and financial puzzles is try to undo that Rubik's Cube in my mind. It's how I geek out. We've been talking about everybody geeking on constitutional law and a couple other things, but this is fun for me. And then sharing that information in a relatable way to employees through financial planning presentations. This particular slide I shared with a group of under 30s. And I thought I'd share it with you today. It's called the latte effect. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of this, but you can see in the imagery back in the background there. I'm not going to call out any companies, but you can see who I'm referring to. Regular but unnecessary expenditures. Let's assume $6. How often? Once every 3 days. Now, when I said once every 3 days, the group started laughing a little bit. And I thought, initially I thought, okay, you know what, maybe I underestimated this a little bit or overestimated. Maybe once every 3 days is too aggressive. And I inquired, and one girl goes, well, that's me every day, twice a day. Okay, dramatic pause, started into the conversation. I said, okay, let's look at this. Let's say you took that same, and by the way, this was a young lady that wasn't doing any deferrals into her 401k because she couldn't afford to save any money for herself. So 7% rate of return, again, hypothetical, and past performance is no guarantee of future results. I have to say that. Over a period of 30 years, total dollars that she would have spent is just under $22,000. The lost interest and earnings on that $22,000 over that period of time is $52,000, just north of that. The real cost of her every 3-day habit is about $74,000. And I haven't taken into consideration the fact that she had to pay taxes to earn that money and then taxes to buy the drink twice a day. So you can compound this pretty aggressively and see the impact that this type of shift, this 180 shift that individuals go through can have. And I also like to point out that in this particular company we did this planning presentation for, the employer had probably the most top line espresso and cappuccino machine available to the employees. She just liked to go to Starbucks. So, okay. So we're talking generally about what small businesses can do. And when I say small business, it's a little bit different for everybody, but generally the theme is anything south of 100 employees. So if in the alternative, you have a larger entity and your question is, what could we be doing as a larger entity? Or your conversation is, okay, we're a small business. I really can't afford these. I get the voluntary portion, but how can we lever the resources that we have available to ourselves? I want to draw your attention to two significant pieces of legislation. One is referred to as the Secure Act, passed in 2019, followed subsequently by Secure 2.0, and the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act of 2010. Now, it's not my objective to go down, the path of red pilling anybody or blue pilling. It's literally just to look at the legislation and see where the benefits are. And specifically with this PPACA, or better known as Obamacare, Affordable Care Act, or Non-Affordable Care Act, whatever your perspective, I was in a place when this was coming to fruition and after it passed, owning a benefits firm. My father-in-law asked me, he goes, is this going to hurt you or help you? And I said, I don't really know. And after having spent the last several days listening to a lot of the conversation here and reflecting back on that period of time, for me as a business owner in this industry, and I'm speaking specifically to the benefits administration industry, it was one of those moments where you kind of ball up in a corner and die slowly, or you embrace it, you figure out the technological and legislative ramifications, and you figure out how to address it. So what I decided to do was I closed myself in my office for an entire weekend next to two 12-foot whiteboards, pulled out the act in its entirety, and I started studying it and drawing it and graphing it and making the connections. And I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, A Beautiful Mind, but if you had walked in on Sunday night, looked at my room, I was either slightly demented or slightly brilliant. But I figured it out. And what I learned was what they had done in this particular act, the PPACA, was the government had taken 1974 ERISA regulations that they had always had in place for 401ks, qualified retirement plans, and they just overlaid it onto the health insurance marketplace. So it made total sense to me. Now what I'm dealing with is kind of a known for us because we're dealing with 401ks and retirement plans for so long. But anybody that's just been in the health insurance marketplace, they're in for a rude awakening. So let's figure out how to bridge this. And so this ERISA regulation overlay brought into effect a couple things that are very important for this association to consider. And I'll start with the retirement plans. And we're going to use the acronym MEP. It should be MERP because it's multiple employer retirement plans, but this is what they call it, MEP. And ultimately, within an organization like this, I'll draw attention to a few key points here. It's recognized by both the Department of Labor and the Internal Revenue Service. Check that box. Second, it's got to be sponsored by an entity or decision-making authority of a bona fide group or association. Let me pass this here, sorry. Third, it's got to be put forth by reasons for more than just putting in a 401k. So you can't just have a bunch of employers get together and say, hey, we're just going to do a 401k plan and we'll say that we're in association with one another, which again, check mark that box. The composition specific to this group, you could do what's called a closed MEP, where you have to be a member of that association and have a fiduciary body or fiduciary governing body. Or you could go as far as opening it up to every member that's associated. One gentleman we were speaking with last night, he asked us what we were here for, and we gave him a general overview. He said he has 75 employees. He paused his bite of steak and he put it down and he looked at me and he's like, that would be amazing. The capacity to bound together all the organizations and groups to get better leverage and put your resources together. So the biggest thing is the tax advantage savings and the cost savings and administration savings that are available to you. So this association could put in a group 401k plan initially for all of its association members, and those members could participate in the plan, reducing all your local office costs. And to illustrate that, and I'm being recorded, so I know I said this. If I were to give the example that an annual administration on a 401k plan is anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000, depending upon the number of lives there and the firms that you're using. If you have 20 organizations that are participating in the plan and the association plan itself is costing $20,000 in administration, that's a 50% savings that's shared amongst everybody. That's significant leverage. In addition to that, on 401k plans, I had a group come to us recently where we priced out the plan starting with 0 assets, and all the record keepers, and when I refer to record keepers, I'm specifically denoting companies like American Funds, Fidelity, Vanguard, the companies that hold your assets and send you your statements and your values every month or quarterly. The plan starting out with 0 assets cost almost 3% a year to administer. Well, that 3% comes out of your returns as participants in that plan. We also ran an illustration moving in about $2 million into that plan as seed monies. That brought the cost of that plan administration down to 0.5% every year. That return, that positive keep, goes back into your accounts as return. Moving from there into the conversation of what are called MEWAs, again, another acronym by the federal government, not to confuse everybody, but they're multiple employer welfare arrangements. And what this does is it aggregates group insurance plans, again, into an association-based plan. They are fully insured. So if you're familiar with using Blue Shield or Blue Cross or the Blues and United Healthcare, Aetna, you can put together an association plan. The whole goal is to, through your leverage or economies of scale, is to go to those carriers and say, look, we have 150 employees. What can you do for us to negotiate our rates? Totally different conversation than going to United Healthcare and saying, I've got 3 employees. What can we do? In the first situation, you're going to be able to negotiate composite rates. Sorry, I have a friend flying around me up here. You're going to be able to negotiate composite rates. In the second situation, you're going to get table rates. And the only difference in table rates is as you get older, your plan gets more expensive. Depending upon your zip code, your prices are set within an area. The composite rates are going to take the aggregate of the insured body and give you a fixed price regardless of your age. So if in a lot of situations, we have employees that have been with large employers for a long time, and then they come onto the small group marketplace, and the first comment I get when we're enrolling them is, I don't understand it. These prices are really expensive. Well, what are you used to? I only played this last time. Okay, you either worked for a municipality or a large company north of 100 employees, and they were able to negotiate their rates. That's not the case over here. So, kind of summarily, there's lots of information here, but when it comes to benefits and the conversation of benefits, employees and quite frankly, employers because a lot of the employers are the employees themselves, so they're buying and shopping for themselves as well. The questions come down to 1, getting access to affordable benefits, 2, getting access to experts that can help them understand how to apply their benefits to their situation beyond what is an HMO and a PPO, or what are the limits of my contributions, and access to education on how to best utilize their benefits. A comment that I made to an employee one time is, hey, you're shopping for a high deductible plan because you can't afford the premium on a monthly basis. But your premium has a tax benefit. Your cost of insurance doesn't. So if you can't afford the cost of insurance, if you can't afford the premium, how are you going to afford the cost of insurance? And it was like a switch that flipped immediately, and we were able to find a benefit that applied more specifically to their situation that was affordable. So what can the national HBPA do, or the affiliate offices? I would submit to you that if you are offering benefits and you want a second opinion or just a consultative overview, we're happy to provide that to you. If you are looking at how to tippy-toe into the marketplace, happy to have that conversation with you as well. And on a national level, if you guys are interested, I would encourage you to pack up line a little bit and say, hey, let's start exploring this. And exploring it could take, on a national level, it could take a significant period of time because we've got to get data together. We've got to look at the Department of Insurance regulations for each state, and we have to go to the carriers and start negotiating rates. On the other side, some benefits are so simple to put in, you could have them in place within less than 90 days. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Thanks, guys.
I do have a question. And granted, this is very informal, so if anyone has a question, let's hear it. So as the national HBPA, you said that they could go in together and then they could do it for all their members, which would be the affiliates. But all of your members would be horsemen as well, because they are considered members of the national HBPA because your affiliate is. Would that draw down to them as well? And would it be cost effective to take it and offer it to the horsemen?
So depending upon the line that you're looking at, and if I conflated the terms affiliate and member, I apologize.
It's okay.
I would say that I would start initially at the affiliate level because you're going to want to set a baseline in place.
For sure.
And on some of the lines, as I mentioned, I denoted closed MEP versus the alternative, which is an open MEP. If you have a closed offering, you're closed significantly specific, focused on the affiliates themselves. So you would start with HBPA nationally. You would look at just wrapping in the affiliate offices and their employees. Then if you secondarily or concurrently wanted to explore an open-ended plan where you could offer it to the members and therefore their staff, that would be another journey you'd have to investigate. So you could go one direction or the other.
So if National did it for the affiliates, they would administrate the health fund, or would they have someone do that for them?
So the administration would be broken down into a couple components. There would be the daily administration, which a team like mine or a benefits firm would handle, which includes the enrollment, the education, the termination, the COBRA requests. It would be the processing with the carriers, the renewal aggregation, getting all the renewal materials together. The HBPA itself would put together an oversight board that annually would review the performance of the plan, determine cost, engagement, carrier analysis, which again would be directed by the consulting firm. And then you likely would have, depending upon the line you're talking about, you would also need a third-party administrator behind the plan for your federal filings. So when it comes to the affiliate offices, there's not much that they would need to do other than coordinate payroll withholdings and communication and eligibility to their employees. But again, if you get the right technology behind it, a lot of that can be automated. And we, on our small business levels, we're often given access to the back office payroll so that we can see and track when an employee is eligible so that the employers aren't caught unaware or distracted by other things. Now we've missed an enrollment period for somebody. So again, there's a couple different segments that you'd have to address, but not a heavy lift. It's completely doable.
Okay. Anybody have any questions before we move on? Claudia? It's on top. On top, somewhere. Here.
Thank you. I am Claudia Goebel with the Minnesota HBPA, and as my biography states, I've been involved in horse racing and as well as worked in human resources for many years. Back in 2014, when I came onto the board, I really never saw my thoroughbred horse world and human resource worlds crossing over, but they certainly have. And as a board member, I look at it this way, that I think each of us have a little human resource professional in all of us, and that is what I'm going to tie together today. One of the things I appreciate, and I will say this quite often, I appreciate on my Minnesota board is that we all bring some type of valuable expertise to the table. And I view our HBPA as a business. Trainers, of course, bring their hands-on training and backside expertise. We have one member who is a financial professional. Two others, including Justin, who was here until yesterday, work in management at their respective employers. One is a former business owner himself, and then me as a human resource with the human resource background. Like any organization, we all have our differing perspectives, but overall, I think we're a really great complement to one another. If any of you know a human resource professional, you might know that are often said, and sometimes favorite words are consistency, 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 and document, document, document. Some of my typical HR responsibilities are employee relations, job descriptions, benefits administration, maintaining an employee assistance program or EAP. And I'm going to focus a little bit today on the benefits administration. So it's a really good tag to what Rishi said, and the EAP. I also deal with policy development and implementation, employee handbooks. A big one is laws and legal compliance. I need to be up to date on local, state, and federal laws. One example was a year ago, July, recreational marijuana was passed. So I had to be up on that and update our policies. Of course, coming to work under the influence is not allowed. Same with recreational marijuana. I also make sure that documents have appropriate verbiage. Sometimes managers come to me, I take out the anger and the angst of what they've written. I ensure that what they've written is factual and objective, and especially in disciplinary actions. I also handle leave of absence administration and recruiting, which is my least favorite. If many of you, the thing these days, the fad, the craze is to ghost people on, it used to be on dating apps. Well, now it is with recruiting. I set up interviews. Someone doesn't show up, no call, no nothing. Set up them on their first day, no call, no nothing. It's just a simple courtesy. All I would ask for is a call saying, I'm no longer interested, but the ghosting happens all the time. I also worked in HR during the thick of COVID, which of course, as we all know, presented its own unique issues that we all maneuvered through. The most challenging issues I deal with on a daily basis involve employee relations, which consists of simple issues from attendance, tardiness, employees simply not getting along with one another, to more complex issues like harassment and employees' work performance near the brink of employment termination. When I do an investigation, there are two sides to every story. I need to be the objective, impartial HR professional, and I need to give each person the opportunity to answer questions and provide information about what was reported. I also interview witnesses as necessary and then make determinations with the manager. So I will quit boring you with all of my HR responsibilities. They're anything but glamorous, exciting. Unless of course I'm getting sworn at, which I kid you not happens. And I'm called, never in my college days did my professor tell me I'd be sworn at and called names, but it is what it is. My job is rather important though, but in order to minimize potential lawsuits and keep the company's name out of the headlines. If you are an employer, which many of us here are employers, whether we work in an office or on the backside, it's really important to apply your policies and practices uniformly and consistently, and across the board. So how exactly has my thoroughbred horse in human resource worlds crossed? The last time I talked to this group at a convention was during the Me Too period. I'm sure we all probably remember it. It seemed like eons ago, but remember when all of the actresses were coming out in droves and reporting some very real and vivid sexual harassment. That's the last time I was talking about this issue. So I am currently on the National HBPA HR and Benefits Provider Committees, which are both definitely in my wheelhouse. Specifically relating to HBPA matters, I assisted with the most recent update of the National HBPA Handbook. I've assisted with writing job descriptions for my own affiliate, initiating employment-related forms. My experience with employee benefits, medical, dental, employee assistance programs gives me the knowledge of what employees really need. And if you please indulge me for a second, I'm going to brag a little bit about my own Minnesota HBPA because we provide some very good benefits and they are HR related, but I'm extremely proud of all that we've accomplished and put our name to at Canterbury Park. I also tell you about these programs too, to potentially start with your own affiliates and at your tracks. And if you were in the benefits providers meeting yesterday, I apologize because this is regurgitated information, but it is really important. We have Abijahs on the backside. I equate this program to an employee assistance program, which I talked about in EAP. An EAP is a third party that provides the benefit of confidential counseling services to employees and their family members. And I know I can speak with Tammy. Tammy and I have talked about mental health issues, which are at the forefront really of a lot of things going on, both in the office work environment and on the backside. Mental health is a topic that's near and dear to us, and it's a very, very important topic, and it's out in the forefront of many times that we turn the news on these days. Abijahs is the baby, if you will, of our track chaplain, Sally, and they provide mental health services to the backside employees and first responders with the use of retired thoroughbreds. We have a program called Furlong Learning, which is a well-attended summer education program for the backside kids and headed by a former hot walker and a teacher by trade. Again, a benefit to backside employees and their and the parents and kids. So benefits going into related to what I do for a living, related to what we're giving for the backside. Lastly, and I tell this to employees constantly, everyone, no matter who you are, whether you work in an office environment, you should feel comfortable coming to work and being at work. I consistently tell employees this. In my thought process, being comfortable at work includes all employees, again, whether you're an office employee or backside employee, sorry. This summer, we started a backside women's group, which stemmed from 2 male HISA investigators meeting alone with the young woman vet. 7 p.m., 8 p.m. at night. With my HR background, there's so much wrong with this picture. This scare tactic, as I call it, was completely intimidating, not appropriate in my HR world, and honestly goonish, if you ask me. Again, and even during an investigation, everyone should feel comfortable at work without retaliation, fear of intimidation, and harassment, and be treated with respect and professionalism. I want to sincerely thank you all for the opportunity to present today and for listening. And I leave you with the 3 C's that I personally and professionally live by. Consistency, again, I'm saying consistency, and communication, which lead to credibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. Wait. You didn't really go really into detail about the little girl that came to your hot walker that became the teacher. I feel like she needs to really expand on this because this is what happens when you actually learn on the backside, then
Yes.
you come back to the backside and work as an adult. So would you
Yes.
expand on that a little bit?
One of the girls that went through the furlong learning program, like I said, it was started by a hot walker, and she was walking hots one day, and this girl in the barn was having challenges with school. So her being a teacher, she tutored her, and then this was born. Well, you know what? You know what this young lady has accomplished? She's graduated from high school, and she's now our horseman's bookkeeper.
And I believe you told me she was attending college as well.
Yes.
She is
Yes.
attending college. So that is a good story. It's a very happy story that we always would love to get out there, that if you encourage your backside, they might come back to work within the industry. And that's what Amplify was talking about the other day, is about actually encouraging and keeping the young kids on the backside and into management roles or anything like that.
Right. And I will add too, during when Megan was giving us her spiel about the furlong learning program, I sat back and I listened and I thought, this is a great program. However, what kid is going to want to go to class during the summer? Well, what else are they going to do at the track? It has been well attended, and we probably have any given time 25 kids attending.
And it's during the summer, so
And
they
it's
would
during the
rather go to
summer.
class than muck stalls all day long.
Yes.
Per Ed. Anybody have any questions? We'll be moving along to Reed. Reed, maybe you're up.
Well, one thing that, and I talk a little loud, so maybe I ought to back up a little bit instead of getting too close. Couple of things. Let me ask you a question. How many of you in here have an employee handbook in your barn?
Not my barn.
In your barn,
I have it in my office.
racing stable? She mentioned that you wrote the National HBPA handbook, right? Assisted with it, and that's for the employees of the national office. And I was just wondering how many trainers have an employee handbook? Let me ask you another question. How many of you use contracts with your owners? How many of you owners have a contract with your trainer, a written contract? I've been doing this for I've been doing it for 50 years, and that's the same answer every year. And it's just different now. It's different. It was different 20 years ago. When I trained, I had written contracts with all of my owners. one of the things that we do have, and you can put this in your employee handbook, we have a great benefits program. This counts as benefits. Ricky was talking about benefits, and we offer benefits to our employees. And they don't know about them. They don't know they can go into the HBPA office and get help with dental care. They don't know they can go to the HBPA office and maybe even get help with some education programs, and that there are scholarships available. I know one of the programs that we've worked closely with was Race for Education. And they had programs for the offspring of trainers and people who worked on the backside of the racetracks, and they couldn't even get enough applications for the scholarships that they had and things like that, mostly because we as trainers and you as owners that work with your trainers, and we don't let the employees know that these things are available. So we do have a really good, our first, Horseman's benefit is one of the benevolent, really is benefit. That's one of the first things that we do. We do that. When I got here, I noticed that there were, and it happens every year. I mean, we see new people that we haven't seen for years, and some people have lost weight. And the rest of us found it after y'all lost it. So y'all have to quit losing weight so that I'll quit gaining weight. But anyway, and other people have lost a little more hair, and that we never find again. And there are things like that have happened. But there's a lot of other things that have happened just within the last 3 to 4 years, just within the last 2 to 3 weeks. Just last week, Germany has now decided that they cannot train and start 2-year-olds until they're 30 months of age. Now, they've made an exclusion for racehorses, at least until 2027, when they're going to have, and they have a group, I can't remember what they call it, but there's an education group, a research group that's going to research whether it's effective for 2-year-olds to train or not. And we have one of the world-renowned orthopedic surgeons from Kentucky, Dr. Larry Bramblage, who has his own record as showing the data that says it's actually beneficial for 2-year-olds to train. That if we don't train 2-year-olds until they're 30 months old, until they're 3 years old, then actually we're going to miss the opportunity to prepare those 2-year-olds for what we're going to be asking them to do. And those are things that are happening, as we go. I mean, we know some of the things that come out about the Horsemen's Integrity and Safety Authority and all that stuff, and the different problems that we have with that. But there are other things that are happening, and we need to stay abreast of it. And education is what we do. The Green Lead program started, as most of you know, way back in 2001 at Lone Star Park, after we put together a program for grooms, and trainers didn't believe that they would come, and they filled up the kitchen at Sam Houston Race Park. There was 120, and only 8 people in that room were grooms or hot walkers. And so that's how this became something, because the grooms really would like to do it, and we've done a lot of it. One of the things that I'm doing right now is I'm doing Groom Elite 101 at Colonial Downs. And we talk about, Mr. Poindexter talks about the fact that where are the young people coming from? And one of the things I will talk about Minnesota, we already mentioned that at Canterbury Park, when we had the convention up there, walked outside, there are a lot of young families there. Now, whether or not they're wagering enough money yet is immaterial. They are coming to the races. I went to Isothermal Community College just outside of Tryon, North Carolina. They have our curriculum down there, and they use it to help prepare some of those local individuals there for working with show horses at Tryon. And I was there for the graduation on a Saturday night. They had the graduation of their first class there. And as we were walking back toward where the graduation was going to be, there was some little girls with their mom walking in front of us, one particular little girl. And she didn't know where they were going, but as they got closer and closer, she saw, and I didn't know what she saw, but I saw her get excited. And then I walked around the corner, and there was some pony rides. And this little girl was so excited. Oh, mom, can I ride one? And that's where they were going. And then the little kids that were playing on the hill, every time one of the horses would come in and run around and go over the jumps, the kids would all stop playing on the hill and run down there to the rail and watch. So they're still out there. We still have people that are interested in horses. And I think we need to do the better job of getting our message out. And that's where Amplify Horse Racing, the other programs that we have had here have really come in to help. And I think we need to continue to give them our support and encourage more of that. You know, one of the things I've talked to handicappers about, they all complain that the racetrack doesn't do enough to bring in new owners or new players. And the horsemen complain that the racetrack doesn't do enough to get new horse owners. And the racetracks complain that the horsemen don't do, you know, everybody complains about everybody else. And I told the handicappers, I said, how many of you have ever gone and invited some people who've never played the game before, brought them to the racetrack and showed them how to make a win place or a show bet? You know, we talked about that in the, how do we get more horses in the races? How do we get more field size and stuff like that? And one of the things that was mentioned is there are too many opportunities. There's too many races, 26 choices of races to go in. And I think we overwhelm our new players sometimes with all of the different types of bets there are, and trying to convince them that we are really sharp handicappers because we know how to read a racing form and we know what all those numbers mean. They don't need to know all that. All they need to know is how to make a win, a place, or a show bet. And you heard Mr. Poindexter say that that's how he got hooked and he got started. And we still have that opportunity, but it's up to us to provide it. I'll be flying back to Colonial Downs in the morning. That's where we're doing Groom Elite 101 this year. We did Florida. I did Florida back in the winter. I still have programs with prisons. We have 8 prisons where they're using our curriculum, and I'll be going up to Attica in August to graduate their first graduate there, to give him his assessment. I'll do the testing there. And we have a program down in St. Croix where the prison down there has started taking, they have 2 island thoroughbreds that they have rescued, and we have an excellent instructor down there. So a lot of things are going to happen and going to change over the next years as far as the Groom Elite program is concerned. One of the things that I'll close with is the fact that it was the HBPA that really started Groom Elite. Back when all of this started, the Texas Horsemen's Partnership, which was a big part of HBPA at the time, was the ones who put up the money for that first class. And over the years, I've gone to many tracks, almost everybody that's represented out here. I was just looking at the list of Thistledowns was in 2003. And it was one of the places where I first started meeting with the people from Ohio and the Ohio HBPA. And this past May, I got a call from a guy in Kentucky, says, you've got a letter here from some lawyer in Tennessee. And he sent that letter on down to me, and I opened that letter and I did some calling around, and I confirmed that it was all true. Somebody that I didn't recognize the name at first, but then I found out once I was able to identify that this was a real thing. And it was a bequeathment from Robert Reeves of Ohio HBPA. And it was for $250,000 to the HBPA, to the elite program. And that will enable us to move this thing forward. And we'll be able to do some things that I've been wanting to do for the last 20 years. And you'll see a lot of some changes as it's going forward. Robert was a big believer in education. And he also gave a bequeathment to the Race for Education, which is one of our cooperating partners, and things like that. So I just wanted to tell the HBPA that because of the HBPA is why we have Groom Elite. And it's the reason I come and the reason I enjoy meeting all of you and participating in these things and taking notes as I go through here, because I'll take this back to the track and I'll talk to the people that are working with the horses, because that's who's coming and taking the classes. And we need to remember that. You know, just hollering out their name when we're in the winner's circle, that's great. It's great to give them that appreciation. But when they need the appreciation is when they're back there every day, early in the morning, and taking care of those horses. And so I thank you for supporting us. And I thank the committee here for having this kind of information. We need to provide good benefits for our employees, and we need to do the right thing, human resources wise, and provide that so that they will know that we care about them, because we want them to care about our horses. Thanks, Tammy.
Thanks, Reed. I do have a couple of questions. Since HITSA has been implemented, has your enrollment increased or decreased? Or is there anything that you've implemented into your Groom 101 to teach them about, just like Ron Moquette was saying about, having to desensitize the stalls, clean them, the new processes? Because I did just get an email the other day that HISA is sending out, HISA HIWU is sending out all this information to the racetracks that they want posted throughout the barns about procedure to the barn staff. It will be sent English and in Spanish. So is this something that you have had to incorporate since HISA has came in? Was it before? And has it affected your enrollment?
The lesson 10 in the Groom Elite 101 class is the test barn. And we have talked about it ever since we started teaching it. And we've had to add these things, but have always emphasized the fact that, the groom has to be very careful. We're talking about water. Somebody mentioned in one of the panels that the horse doesn't want to pass by a water bucket. And we tell those grooms, if your horse drinks out of the wrong bucket, or if you see another horse drinking out of your horse's bucket, don't let your horse drink out of that bucket until they change it out. We do have specific lessons and have made it even more emphatic because of HISA and these different rules that have come out. And so when they do come out with these are things that we need to post in the barn, we'll post them. We have a fire prevention flyer that they post. In the tracks in Texas, they had to do that because the fire marshal was about to close the tracks down because they were violating all of the fire laws and things like that. So we will do that. And if you need anything like that in any education pieces and stuff like that, we can do that and provide portions of what our text material is that we teach them. And you can use that in your programs if you want it. So just let me know on that.
Well, we thank you, Reed. Everyone appreciates everything that you do for our backside help. Does anyone have any questions? Well, I want to thank each and every one of you.
I do want to ask one other question. How many of your racing commissions are requiring continuing education? That's another answer that we pretty much have gotten. Did somebody raise their hand and say West Virginia is requiring continuing education?
Yes, it is.
Oh, yes, for trainers, but not for grooms. Some of them are requiring. We did one at Colonial on the Stride Safe system. If you haven't heard about that too, you ought to check that out too. We did one of those this year for them, but the grooms are supposed to have continuing education. The HISA rule requires that grooms have 2 hours of continued education before they're licensed. Again, before they renew their license. So far, no racing commission is enforcing that rule, but we do have Groom Elite 101 and any of the Groom Elite classes are approved as continuing education classes. And we actually have, we can come and do a 2-day leg and bandaging class, for example, that will qualify as for 2 hours of continuing education, 6 hours. But it's 3 hours over 2 days and it counts as 2 hours of continuing education.
I have a question in the back.
So to that point, I've had people at the track say, I know we need to do continuing education. Doc, where do we go and how do we do this and who do we go to? I did one of these looks like, I don't know where you go. So was there vendors or anybody who's helping you with your continuing education ability? This is a question that has come to me by grooms that said, I want to be in compliance with this HISA thing, Dr. Holland, but I don't know even how to do it. So nobody's explaining to them how to do it.
Send them to the HBPA office because the HBPA office will then send them to me or have them get in touch with me. We actually have some programs and we're putting more and we're going to be putting more on through this bequeathment from Robert. We're going to be getting they are now available online, but not in a professional way that they're going to be in the next 6 months. And they'll be able to get some of that can be approved just by doing it online. Of course, having grooms to do stuff online is a lot easier now than it was 20 years ago when we started this.
So I was just going to say that there's a grouping or a listing of classes that trainers can take online. And they'll get their certifications for it, for the classes. And I think that it's a requirement for HISA that the trainers have to take classes too. And
It is, and it is actually on HISA.org. Well, they will give you a link that takes you to your
Well-
CE. And it is multiple videos that they actually are approved. And if you watch it, it'll automatically give your CE credits. You
yeah.
print your certificate off.
And the other thing that we do in West Virginia is that we offer the classes in our HBPA office because a lot of our people don't have access to the internet or choose not to have access. You know, they don't like it. They're not very comfortable. So they come to us and we set up 45-minute classes. Every Wednesday, we have the ability for them to come into the office and take them. Sometimes Wednesdays don't work for people. So we just kind of like, we're kind of open about it and let them just do it whenever. If they come in and say, hey, I need a class, we'll let them have the class. But they come to the office and we'll let them do it. The other thing is that system that Tammy was talking about, it's very user friendly. They can print their certificates right off of the
Yes, you can.
computer.
I'm not 100% sure who's checking any of that or how they get it implemented up there because we've had nobody say anything since this has been implemented about CE credits where you can't run because you haven't done that.
And that's the same thing in West Virginia is I'm not sure that even the Racing Commission is checking. It's supposed to be a condition in our rules of racing. It's written as a condition of your receiving your permit, but I don't think that the commission ever checks on that.
Anybody else? Well, I want to thank each and every one of y'all. It's been very informative. I appreciate it. Appreciate all the affiliates and what they do. So thank you.
Thank you. It's a very good scheduling.
I think all of you would agree this has been a tremendous conference. The panels, the topics have been very informative and timely. I'm going to say one thing, it's been said before, but you know, the thing that keeps most horsemen in the game is that next crop of 2-year-olds. And all the things that Mr. Poindexter had to say that he was so proud of. Did you see how his face changed when he started, when he was asked about, well, what 2-year-olds do you have coming up? He lit up. I mean, that's a really true thing that keeps all of us involved. And again, Eric's gonna come after me and he's gonna thank all the appropriate corporate sponsors and different affiliates for what they've contributed. But, you know, very few people are gonna recognize that, you know, this whole thing was put together by a truly small group of people. And between Eric and Lauren, Audria, Dennis, Michelle, Jenny, I mean, all these people have contributed to such a degree that it could not happen without them. But the leader of the ship, the captain, is the one standing here next to me, and he deserves a lot of accolades for that. And I hope you all recognize that. So on that, I'm going to pass it to him.
Well, I want to thank everyone, just as Dr. Daniels did. It's been an honor to be in this position. We've truly appreciated, being here in Iowa again. I definitely want to thank the Iowa HBPA, particularly, President Dave McShane, his board, Executive Director John Moss, Michelle McShane again. She's an integral part of national as much as she is for the Iowa HBPA, so we can't thank them enough. As far as thanking Lauren and Audria, it's pretty hard to, pretty hard to put that into words. Obviously, I get pulled in a lot of different directions. Lauren knows how much my phone rings, how I have, 5 to 6 45-minute calls and really don't get anything else done. And then I go, bitch to Lauren because I didn't get my to-do list done. So she's like, okay, I understand. But anyway, it's been an honor. I want to certainly recognize all the speakers. Obviously, I do the best I can to try to get educational, pertinent, right timings on the topics. This year was very fluid. I've said it probably 6, 7 times. Normally, we haven't been doing conferences in the summer for a reason. And that reason is, I think 85% of our affiliates are racing during the summer, and it's tougher to get here. It's the reason why we dialed back to one conference, usually in February and March. But I missed my guess when I thought the Fifth Circuit would give us an opinion by the end of the year, and I didn't want to be planning and working on a conference in March and February because we would have the opinion. Well, lo and behold, that bit me in the ass. And July 5th, we get an opinion 2 weeks before the conference. So best laid plans, but it just didn't work out. But yeah, again, thanks to everyone who's been here, all the speakers, obviously all the corporate sponsors. I've tried very hard, and I definitely want to thank Dennis, who's helped me this year try to get more signage and recognition to the sponsors, not only corporate, but obviously for the panels, all the affiliates and individual companies who help with funding to let us put on panels like this and pay for hotel space for when the speakers come in. So it means a lot. But honestly, it just means the world to have the affiliate members here, the board members, anyone who comes to this conference just means they have an appreciation for what our topics are. And that means a lot to me. So I'm glad to